So it's stated that deer sometimes gets attracted by the illusory presentation of water in the distance, and we call that mirage. Anyone here seen mirage before? Someone here did not ever see mirage? You guys saw it? Illusory manifestation of water. You look. I saw it over a highway on a hot day. You look in the distance, and you could swear it's water. So the deer like this sees water in the distance, although there's no water, so pursues this water. And I guess the heat, the way the heat and the air interact, it creates this illusory presentation of water. So the deer, being thirsty, pursues this illusory presentation of water. And every time the deer moves over to the spot where the water was manifested, finds no water. And then after not finding water there, keeps moving forward, because water seems to be always moving forward. So in this way the deer goes farther and farther in the same direction. Now the thing about this water is that it tends to manifest over a barren, uniform landscape, and usually when it's hot. So I have just described the desert. So in this way, the deer moves deeper and deeper and deeper into the desert. And it's stated that sometimes the deer goes so far deep into the desert, pursuing this illusory manifestation of water, that it went too far to turn around and successfully make it back to the shade. And it gets stuck out there, basically dies. So this is a sad story. So similarly, I think every human being must have had this experience that the physical pleasure, basically we could say materialistic pleasure, is of the same nature. Just like presence of water in the desert gives some sense of satisfaction, or there's water, but it's more of a mental satisfaction than any other satisfaction. And then when the deer moves over to the spot where it saw water, there's no water. So similarly, gross physical pleasure tends to function the same way. It makes appearance and rings the bells and flashes lights and makes promises of all kinds of happiness and satisfaction. And as you're contemplating and you're experiencing excitement, and most of the pleasure happens at this point. And then as you move forward towards it, when you're about to grab it, there's no substance. There's no substance, and you feel like you need to repeat the process. Why? Because the complete satisfaction did not take place, and it never does. Rather, it seemed to have moved again into the distance. Then again flashes, rings bells, and makes all kinds of promises. So you move farther in that way, and in this way the person may move farther and farther and farther away into the desert until it's too late. Now if you take any sensual gratification to these extreme levels, you're going to get stranded, just like the deer gets stranded in the desert. And it's so difficult at that point, to turn around, that you just, even though the person is suffering, cannot turn around. Of course, we could say, use a common example of drugs or whatever, but pretty much any addiction is like this. I was, some time ago I told a story, well, not a story, a real incident, where I visited a home of a rich person. Now, a rich person or a poor person, that does not make one more or less materialistic or more or less spiritual. That has nothing to do with it. It's how we use what we've gotten into our possessions. But anyhow, upon visiting this person's home, this person was a perfect gentleman. I mean, this person I'd stay with this person for almost a week, and treated him with utmost respect. Just like even nowadays in certain parts of India and Asia, they treat monks with a great deal of reverence. So he treated me like that. But after some time, I realized that he was lonely. He was very lonely, and basically the reason for him inviting me to be with him is so he's not lonely. And I felt like telling him, you don't have to be lonely in this. And I was lonely too in that castle. Huge house. It was so big that we'd sometimes see each other only once or twice a day. It was an insanely huge house, palatial building. And then after a week, after just a few days, I felt lonely, even though I'm a monk. Monk means solo. So even I felt lonely. So I took a trip back to our ashram here, and then I came here, and there were 20 or so monks bouncing all over the place, and it was jolly and happy, and I felt relief, And then of course I had to go back because I came here just for get something. Then I came to that place which initially I thought was perfect and awesome and quiet, but then I felt myself lonely again, and then I realized that he was also lonely. As a matter of fact, all this is getting recorded, okay, I have to be careful. But this person really once in a while calls me just so he's not lonely. So it's kind of a sad story. But at the same time, so even though he's stranded in this loneliness, he does not have to be lonely. But he's become so hooked, so attached to the extreme amounts of comfort that this lonely place provides to him, that he cannot leave this lonely place. So he's experiencing satisfaction due to the awesome amounts of comfort that he finds there, and yet at the same time he's burning on the inside. And he can't leave because he's stuck. So those are two examples. One is a really gross one of drugs, and the other one is a little more subtle, where one becomes attached just to comfort. And this is the story of the deer, which just gets pulled deeper and deeper into the desert, and then becomes impossible for the deer to turn around. You could also think of a donkey with a carrot on the stick, dangling. Never quite reaching that darn carrot.